Good evening again, friends, and welcome to our weekly live stream, which I always struggle to get started. I'm always hoping to try and do it for 7, my friends, but just circumstances sometimes take over. But anyway, we're still well on a Sunday. And welcome to those of you who are joining us live, and of course, those of you who are watching this later. The beauty of doing it live, of course, is that we make the occasional mistake, Now, as you can see by the title today, my friends, it's the original principle and the meaning of life, number 2. Okay, the question mark there is important. We're introducing the first ever documented substantial archetype. Now, what I hope to do is continue doing these every week on this particular subject, because and as people come on board, feel free to leave comments, friends, because as you'll see now, I took some of the comments from last week to add into this week's live stream. I think that formula will help, because I'd like to get more people observing and commenting and challenging if they see something that doesn't make sense to them, that they challenge me on it, and hopefully I can explain it better. So yes, so we're going to start today. Basically, I'm going to recap a little bit about what we covered last week, so as that people who may be on here tonight for the first time will understand what it is we're talking about. Okay. Now, on current events, before we move to the slides for this week, current events, this migration pact thingy has been signed into law, apparently. The reason I'm focusing, friends, on this original principle is because I sincerely believe, although I hesitate to use the term believe, because you either know something or you don't. It's what we believe that we're all getting in trouble about. But I'm using that term so as not to sound too dogmatic. I could go as far as to say that I know that the more of us that understand this original principle, the sooner we're going to be able to tackle the problems that are confronting us all on a global scale. What's missing at the moment is that there are plenty of people commenting on the symptoms of the problem. There's not enough people who understand what the actual overarching problem is. And I believe an understanding of this original principle will lead us to that unified conclusion. So, without further ado, this is the book I wrote. Now, this would have been, it's got to be close to 30 years ago, friends. As you can see there, I'll pull it up a little bit for you. The Color of Truth, Volume 1, Patterns in Light. There's supposed to be 3 volumes. Hopefully I'll get around to the other 2 at some point. I've got all the materials. Amazing Coincidence or Intelligent Design. And I'd like to, first of all, I want to read the quote at the bottom there from a professor at Limerick University. It's one of the 4 professional quotes I got when I launched the book. An extraordinary work which amounts to a theory of everything, the philosophical equivalent of quantum physics string theory, astonishing in its breadth and depth. And I know it sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet here. That's not the point here, guys. It's to encourage people to actually take it seriously, and maybe if you can find a copy of that. Now, I have to say, at that point, I wasn't talking about the original principle. I was talking about the triadic archetype, which led into this understanding of this original principle. They're very much linked. But here I'd like to summarize what archetypes are, so that anybody who does not get it or doesn't understand can come back to this and refer to it. So archetypes, what are they? Archetypes may be described as timeless themes and patterns common to all humanity, regardless of nationality, culture, creed, or the era in which we live. Representing the collective psychological group. Sorry, guys, we've got Danny in the back there. Just one moment. Danny, please. Okay. Danny's my special son. Maybe I'll turn this a little way that way so it's less of a distraction. Okay, he's my special son. Doesn't always follow daddy's instructions, but that's okay. Representing the collective psychological blueprint of humanity, archetypes inhabit our dreams, our mythologies, and our folklore. Believed to originate in the depths of the collective subconscious, archetypes not only reflect who we are, they hint at what we could be. But archetypes are themes, not things, shadows, not substance, or at least that's what we thought. This book, The Color of Truth, Volume 1, documents a unique and pioneering breakthrough in understanding these vital archetypes and, by association, the very meaning of life itself. Now, as you've seen in the title, I said we're introducing the first substantial archetype. That's what makes this original principle different. You see, it affects us all because it is an archetype, but it is witness to itself. There is so much evidence that this thing is real, and it manifests itself in various forms in human society and history and academics and scripture and science, everything. So I'm hoping that people will latch onto this and bear with me. So on to the next one, guys. So Carl Gustav Jung was mentioned last week. Now, as you'll see in a minute, I'm using some of the comments that people made on Facebook and YouTube and places like that during the live stream last week, just to sort of knit these things together. But very simply, Carl Gustav Jung, he was mentioned in connection with theosophy. That was brought up last week. Now, don't worry that these words are new to you. It'll all make sense in a moment, okay? So Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical psychology. Initially a close collaborator of Freud, he diverged over the nature of the libido, the scope of the unconscious, and the role of religion. Jung developed key concepts such as the collective unconscious, archetypes, introversion and extroversion, psychological types, and individuation, profoundly influencing psychiatry, philosophy, religion, literature, and the arts. I have a lot of time for this man. I think he was genuine, he was sincere. But one of the questions that was raised last week, let's see if we have a look at that now. Oh yes, when we talked about coincidences. Now, very simple, all right. This is the way he put it, all right. Now, he tends to write a little bit verbose in academic language. Meaningful coincidences are unthinkable as pure chance. The more they multiply and the greater and more exact the correspondence is, they can no longer be regarded as pure chance, but for the lack of a causal explanation, have to be thought of as meaningful arrangements. So that's how he put it. I've translated that, if you like, in blue there. Coincidences are not coincidences if they keep on happening. Now, I hope that's a truism that everybody can agree with. Okay, guys. Now, last week, Tom Fitzgerald, now Tom is a regular contributor. He comments on various posts I make. We don't always agree on everything, especially when it comes to the political realm and stuff. But I thought I'd, in good grace, show Tom's comment here, because he says Carl Gustav Jung did study with Freud and knew him well, very well, but disagreed with his obsession concerning the complex Oedipal. How do you say it? I studied psychology too. Oedipal, yeah, as he was more concerned with the shadow self or the alter ego held within our subconscious dreams and our mythical world. His desire was to release the true self with intuitive self-discovery, unlike Freud, who chained people up in their sexual fantasies, many of which he projected onto his own patients. Then he says to me personally, I detect a change of emphasis and attitude from you, and your talk tonight was interesting, if not revelatory. And I responded, a rare compliment, Tom. Please stick around because it gets even more interesting as we go along, especially as we tackle some of the current global events in context of this original principle archetype idea. Now, Sean contributed last week, asking what's it all about, why are we here? Now, these slides came from last week. I'm not going to talk at length about them. You can see they've got a small box around them. That's to indicate that they were here before, but that was the title, as we did last week. We very, very quickly, we explained that the yin-yang elements of the original principle are embedded in the unifying source, although it's the yin-yang concept. Like, say, if you want to know more about this, go back to video number 1, which was last week. Each of these 3 parts of the original principle has thematic, mathematic, and color properties that correspond accordingly to all known aspects of life, energy, and matter, including human history. Hope you're still with me, guys. All right. And yes, hello there, John. Good to see you, John, and Ida. Hello. Then the following, now again, we're just running through these really quickly. These were from last week, friends. Okay, just to recap so everybody's on board. So then I explained that there are numerical properties at the end of the visible spectrum. So we see the range we see is between deep blue and deep red. Deep blue's range is 400 nanometers, deep reds are 700 nanometers. It's important because these numbers appear with incredible coincidental consistency, so much so that there has to be a reason for it. I'm suggesting it's because we are all linked into this archetype. We don't actually know it, but it makes sense. Why? Because we're all literally made of light. Okay, and again, for more detail on this, go back to last week. So I want to get through these so we can get on to the new stuff. Okay. Then here, this other slide here then was to show you infinity or source or God, or whatever you want to call it. And then you have masculine body action on the left and feminine, the mind, the wisdom. It aligns with the chakras, spirit, mind, and body. On the left there, CPA, concept, plan, and action. On the right there, OFM, origin, feminine, masculine. It all makes sense. And as we go into the Garden of Eden in a few minutes, that will make a little bit more sense even as we reflect on this. But I just want to keep everybody's minds fresh. Okay. So, here we have, then I touch on the Garden of Eden. We explain that in the mythological Garden of Eden, which is the only story we have that talks to a certain extent about how it was in the beginning or how it was possibly meant to be. And in there, you would have God, Adam, and Eve would correspond to these different colors, the same as spirit, mind, and body. And of course, there are two trees in the garden. One is the tree of life, which would represent Adam, and one is the tree of knowledge, which would represent the feminine, the mind, wisdom, which would have been Eve. All right. And again, go back to video number 1 if you want to really get into this. Now, you might say, well, why are we rambling off here now? Maureen made a comment last week, as you can see. Alice Bailey. Who's Alice Bailey, you're saying? All right. Well, she was known as the mother of the New Age movement, but there's more going on here than meets the eye, guys. Now, I wanted to throw this in, seeing as it popped up. We'll just spend a couple of minutes explaining this. I'm not going to read all the text here, but I'll read what Maureen says. Alice Bailey claimed her books were written in cooperation with a Tibetan teacher. That's right. As she talked about the consciousness of the atom, the destiny of the nations, discipleship, and the New Age, etc., etc. Now, I'll summarize the Alice Bailey phenomenon here. You can see there we've got the United Nations logo, and down at the bottom there, that's somebody's sort of a warning video. Go and look for it if you like, guys, and listen to it and understand it. But Alice Bailey was profoundly into this theosophy, and that's a merging of theology and philosophy. All right, science and religion. There were some very bright people, very intelligent people. Jung apparently had some association with them as well. And like all of the most damaging mistruths or the most damaging lies, they would contain a kernel of truth in them, sufficient to bring a lot of people along. But ultimately, the great fundamental problem with Alice Bailey and her teachings, and she got them from a Mrs. Blavatsky or something. We'll come to her in a second. It's very simply, and I have to be general here, guys, but it's just to keep everyone on board with where we're going with this. The study, it's highly symbolic. There's an awful lot of symbolism. There's an awful lot of discussions about light and the deity and the Christ figure and all this sort of stuff. The problem is that their deity, to put it very simply, guys, their deity was Lucifer. All right. And the Lucis Trust, which Alice Bailey set up, as Maureen says there, was originally called the Lucifer Publishing Company. And it still has consultative status with the United Nations and is responsible for a great deal of the printed materials and backing the sustainable goals and all this sort of stuff, okay? But what's interesting here, guys, I want you to understand this, is its first address, the Lucifer Publishing Company, right? Its first address was 666 United Nations Plaza. Well, we all know that that's symbolically the diabolical number, the mark of the beast and all that, the number of the beast. Let's see what else I've got for you here. So here is Madame Blavatsky. Said it right this time. Sorry about that. Never knew her personally. Now, she was credited with being an arch Satanist, if you like. And then Alice Bailey was her sort of understudy. She was seen as Blavatsky's successor. Now, that at the top left, In Search of Black Assassins, is a website. If you want to go and read more, I took some of this information from here. But you'll see the shot in the middle. It says there is no religion higher than truth. Now, you'll hear me saying this as well, guys. I'm constantly saying that a religion that says it is the truth it's an oxymoron. It can't be possible, because a religion did not exist in the Garden of Eden. It arrived afterwards, after we fell from grace. We fell away from the source, and we needed a means to try and get back there, at best, at its very best, okay? So, as it says here, as the website says, the New Age religious movement was substantially influenced by 33rd degree Freemason Madame Helena Blavatsky and co-Mason Alice A. Bailey of the Theosophical Society. And she had her husband, Foster Bailey, this is Alice Bailey's husband, was also a 33rd degree Mason, I believe. Bailey was an English Satanist who emigrated to America and who lived from 1880 to 1849. She was the spiritual successor of Madame Blavatsky. All right, now we have to start putting some of these things together. Remember, as Jung said, coincidences keep happening. They're not coincidences. The symbolism is hugely important. To summarize very quickly, guys, 4 ways of looking at reality or perceiving reality or existing or making reality manifest, okay? The first is through your beliefs. Anyone can believe anything they want. I won't ramble on about that tonight. That's why we're all arguing about stuff, because we're arguing about things that you cannot prove, okay? People choose to believe in them, but they don't necessarily have the proofs, and then they try and force it down other people's throats. The next level of understanding is reality. Now, it's harder to argue about reality. That's a pen because it's a pen, because it writes. It's not a toothpick, or it's not a hairbrush, okay? You can try and use it like that, but it's not going to work very well, okay? It's a pen. No one's going to argue about that. So that supersedes beliefs, reality. The problem we have is our reality, human history and human society and everything we know about life is largely a false reality as opposed to a true reality, all right? And what's false about it is that evil exists in human society and in human hearts and minds, all right? And that creates this state of being that we're in, which is technically the kingdom of hell on earth, where we're all being forced to have to deal with evil on a daily basis. In some cases, some of us are responsible for it. In some cases, we're just victims of it, and so on and so forth. But that's what makes this reality not right, if you know what I mean, okay? Or to be more specific, not true. It's real because you can touch it, taste, smell, and feel, but it's not the way it was meant to be, all right? Just like a war is real, but it's terrible. And if you had a choice, you wouldn't have it like that, okay? So the next stage, the next level is the symbolism, and then above the symbolism is perfection. Now, because we don't have perfection, we need the symbolism as the image. Remember, concept, plan, action. The symbolism is the concept, all right? And it's from that concept we learn how to return to the original plan and the original actions, all right? That's roughly, I hope you bear with me. I hope you followed me with that. And hello, Maureen. We've already quoted you as well. Oh, yeah, no, Alistair Crowley, Sean. We're not going to talk about him today. All right, we have enough diabolicals around not to have to drift into history to find them. You know, there's plenty of them active on the stage right now, Sean, you know. And whoever that is, hi, Stephen. It's good to see you. Thank you very much. Philomena, hello there. I may miss a few guys. My apologies. But if there's any good questions or comments that come up that I notice, I'll pop them over. Now, I won't, again, I'm still trying to get this right, guys. Hopefully there'll be some comments made by people either watching live or later that I'll be able to bring in at the beginning of next week's. But let's continue here, because I want to give you a warning about the United Nations in particular, guys. All right. Now, yes, again, this is Alice Bailey talking. I just wonder if yes, so she laid the real foundations of the New Age movement and is regarded as its high priestess. As a spiritist medium, she allegedly received messages from a so-called master of wisdom, this guy in Tibet. These messages, which she wrote under dictation from this demonic being, now this is not me writing this, it's somebody else, were published in numerous books. Her secret dictation from this demonic being were published in numerous books. Her secret teachings, which to this day are followed minutely in New Age circles, set forth the plan for the Luciferic New World Order. Alice Bailey revealed the secret underlying agenda of the New Age religious movement. There is no question, therefore, that the work to be done in familiarizing the general public with the nature of the mysteries is of paramount importance at this time. These mysteries will be restored to outer expression through the medium of the church, false church, and the Masonic fraternity. When the Great One, the Antichrist, comes with his disciples and initiates, we shall have the restoration of the mysteries and their esoteric, that's supposed to say, presentation as a consequence of the first initiation. Now, I know it's a little bit of gobbledygook for those of you that don't know. I'm not attacking wholesale the New Age movement, because there's an awful lot of wonderful ideas and concepts in it that sort of counteract a lot of the problematic themes of mainstream religion, let's put it that way. All right. So it's an attempt by often very good, well-intentioned, decent people to try and see beyond the limits of standardized dogmatic religion, if you like. It's not to say that everything that they're working towards or talking about is either right or wrong. It's rarely that simple. But what most people don't know is that at the highest level, the Masonic order, and at the highest level in the United Nations, people have to swear an allegiance to Lucifer. Now, I hope I put that slide in this week, and if I didn't, I'll pop it in next week. I have a feeling I forgot to put it in. I found it, though. It's absolutely striking. It might come up in a minute. But first of all, I wanted to show you this. This is now just an image of the mural that sits in the United Nations. Now, we talk about symbolism. I'm not going to go on too long about it. There are studies online about this, explaining what it may or may not mean and all the rest of it. You've got black people in chains down there on the right, if you see. You have the phoenix, which is associated in ancient Egyptian mythology with demons, the sort of the devil figures rising from the ashes and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of stuff here that could be interpreted in many different ways. You've got the twin towers there, center left, in the background, and so on and so forth. There's a blue rope being stretched between two snakes somewhere, if I can remember where that is. I don't see it. But anyway, the blue represents the feminine wisdom being, stretched and so on. But to stay with the theme, guys, let's just pop on to the next one. All right, now it starts getting to be interesting, because that mural is in the council chamber at the United Nations in New York, okay? And right next door to it, they have this, the United Nations meditation room, all right? This is colloquially known as Satan's altar, right? I'm not even joking, guys. The local people call it that, right? It's on its side. It's a pyramid on its side. Those of you that know your pyramid studies will know that one of the unique things about the pyramid is that the inside was exactly the measurements of pi. I'm not a mathematician. Please go and check this out, and you'll see why this is important, okay? So the pyramids somehow were constructed in such a way that the exact measurements of pi were inside the internal chambers. Not all of them, but I remember reading that and thinking that is striking, because as it says here, the UN meditation room, the entrance to the meditation room at the United Nations headquarters in New York is 33 feet long and 18 feet wide. This person, this is not me again, guys, this person has noticed that those are 3 6s are 18. Okay, the symbolism, guys, the diabolical symbolism. 33 feet long is also not just by chance. This is not by happenstance. All right, like I say, the connection with 30-degree Masons, 33, what are they called? Vertebrae in your spine. Okay, the witching hour is at 3:33 a.m., the time when apparently the spirit world and our human world are closest together and all that sort of stuff. Superstitions, maybe, and so on. But it also represents a third of the original principle, 33.3%. Christ died at exactly the age of 33 and a third. It was April, wasn't it? Easter time, 4 months into the year, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of these connections that are worth watching and observing, because what's happening is the people that I call the diabolicals. Now, these are people who are actively pursuing a Luciferian agenda in the mistaken understanding that Lucifer is sort of their savior, right? But they have different principles, arguably, than, for instance, standard Christian principles, love thy neighbor and all that. Well, no, not if it's going to cost me a promotion. No, I'm not going to be doing that much loving you. You know what I mean? It's all about ruthless self-service, ambition, glory, and, the usual things that go with power and greed and all that sort of stuff, okay? But it's worth noticing there's another 3 6s, 18, and then the 33. Okay, let's see what else this says. The small, dimly lit, windowless room has been described by some as a satanic temple. That's right, Satan's altar, I've heard it called. It is designed like a pyramid, lying on its side with a mural in place of the capstone. So that would be the head of the pyramid where that mural is. Okay. The custodian of this ominous shrine is the Lucis Trust, formerly known as the Lucifer Publishing Company. Now, in case I'm still not getting through to people on this issue about, because I'm always saying that organizations cannot function unless, large ones, unless they become, quote, diabolical, meaning they have to adopt a model of operation which is directly in opposition to the original principle. And I would argue, therefore, directly in opposition to any benign God source, okay? This should catch some interest as well, all right? Top right, that box there, guys, on the right-hand side, all right? That figure at the top there, it's just, again, not making this up, guys, that is the 666th root of pi, all right? If you're a mathematician, again, confirm or deny it. What's unusual about this is if you look at the address of the United Nations address, there it is underlined in red. The zip code is 10017, which happens to be the first 5 digits of the 666th root of pi. And interestingly, they're sitting on 18 acres of land. Okay, guys, watch the symbolism, because, as I've said to a friend of mine recently, it's like someone came to visit and I was explaining a few things to him and explaining how the symbolism is very important and how it's being used to contract us to stuff, events, agendas. And it's the quote that you get when if you walk into a courtroom, certainly an Irish courtroom, and you just say, well, I didn't know I was committing a crime. Ignorance is no excuse of the law, my lad, send him down, right? So in the same way, these people use the symbolism in a form of a contract. They're declaring in advance. Remember, concept, plan, action. Here's the concept, right? We're doing it symbolically first. And if you don't object to it, if you don't resist it, if you go along with it, that's considered tacit approval. Just like a contract that you didn't understand, the small print, oh, well, you signed it, buddy. Yeah, except there's no physical signature here. You may not even know. But in sort of universal cosmic terms, if you like, it's no excuse. That's why it's super important that we understand the symbolism as it's rolled out in front of us. Okay, so the altar is how much? It's a 6-ton block of iron as an altar. Okay, there's the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 of them. Why 17? I'm suggesting that the 18th kicks in when they've got the first 17 in place. 18 is the completion stage. The symbolism of 666, straight off the internet here, guys. The number 6 repeated 3 times signifies incompleteness and human failure. falling short of the divine perfection symbolized by 7. Do you remember 7 on the red end of the spectrum? Completion. All right, guys? The triple repetition intensifies the meaning, representing the ultimate imperfection and pretension of evil. The beast number is described as the number of a man, or mankind actually, yeah, grounding it in human, earthly, and fallen systems, in contrast to divine completeness. And you've heard me talk about this before, some of you guys, where I've said, well, the original principle, when the fall happens, right, we lose the heavenly aspect, the spirit, the presence of God, whatever we want to call it, and we're left with only the mind and the body. So the spirit is gone, and we've just got a mind and a body. Well, a cow in the field has a mind and a body. You know, a dog in the street has a mind and a body. They might have personalities too. But what I'm saying is, if you remove a third of the original principle, you're left with 66.6%. All right? There's your mark of the beast again. All right? All starts to make sense, guys. All right? Not just in human form, but also in collective form, in organizational form, yeah, and so on and so forth. But it's only attuned to humans. No other entity on the planet is capable of premeditated evil. It's only human beings, guys. That should tell us something. Now, there's a small clip here, guys, very short clip to play for you. It's about a minute long. One of my friends, John, sent it to me during the week. I don't know this lady. What's her name? Sonia Polton. But feel free to go and check her out, guys, if you wish to. Now, she's doing an expose on Esther Ranson. And during this expose, she's pointing out that Esther Ranson had a big hand in the child protection network in the UK. And apparently she's on her last legs now. And again, I don't know enough about her. I saw her on TV a few times when I was younger. But she's just making a point about organizations. It's only 1 minute, guys, but it's the first time I've heard somebody else actually make this clear statement that I thought I'd sort of uncovered this myself. But please listen to the statement she makes, and then we'll get back to the next slide.
Just in an interview with Jewish News about, do you think enough is being done to campaign for children, as one example? And I'm going to read her quote, a direct quote. Said, "We need to be constantly alert to the dangers affecting young people, and organizations are not nearly accountable enough to their clients and customers. When we launched Childline, I was warned by an American psychiatrist, on day one, an organization aims to serve its clients. From day two, its main aim is to protect itself." Well, what an admission. We know it's true, but what an admission. So she's saying that the genesis, the beginning of Childline was about protecting children, but very soon after, it was about protecting Childline. And I thought that was a very interesting admission, and it says so much about the world.
And I cut her a little bit short there, but it says so much about the world and the way things are run. Yeah, I keep on repeating it, guys. It's a bit hard for us to get our heads around it because it's everything we know. Everything we know is institutions, organizations, businesses. You know, the whole of human society is set up like this. I mean, it's very hard for us to imagine it being different. But actually, what I'm saying is this is the diabolical model, because the moment that you or I have to surrender our own moral authority in order to comply with somebody else, in other words, the boss, you know, or the headmaster or whoever it might be, right? The government, when they tell you to do something and you actually believe in your heart this is not right, but if you don't do it, you're not going to get paid at the end of the week, or you're going to be punished somehow, right? Which is what this whole New World Order is all about. It's about them telling us what we can and cannot do, regardless of our own personal sense of morality. Sorry, Danny, I got Danny in it again there. And that is an abrogation of actually the first commandment, guys. I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no strange gods before me. So it's really that simple, but it's good to hear somebody say it. So thank you for that, John. It was good of you. Just have a look over here quickly at your contract with who? Using numbers as a contract. Oh, I see. Yes. No, it's again, it's another concept that is maybe unfamiliar to people. you have to ask yourself, like Jung said, if coincidences keep happening, they're not coincidences. Now, I could roll out, I'm not going to go off on it now today, but we'll do it another day. The whole pandemic thing, guys, right? It is absolutely riddled with 666 symbolism all the way through it, guys. It's absolutely riddled with it. So much so that someone like me, who knows a bit about this symbolism, immediately went on red alert and thought there's absolutely no way I can conform with this thing. But it's from that understanding you go, well, why do they have to put the symbolism? And we've heard the stories of them putting stuff in movies and stuff, and then it's happening, you know, months or years later. It's almost like a prediction. It's because of this original principle, notion, concept, plan, action. It has to work in that way. Sorry about the little bells and whistles going off here, guys. All right, let's bring the slides back on. Okay, so yes, let's see what's the next one. I think now we're back in. Yes, here we go. So just to re-emphasize the point that's been asked there by the Funnies Fun, whoever that is, the Funnies Fun, yeah. If this original principle is, as I suggest, a fundamental substantial archetype, and it's sort of more than that, but that's the closest we can describe it in psychological terms at the moment, okay? This diagram on the left, that's the satanic element at the top, all right? You'll see that the colors correspond to black, blue, and red, okay? The black represents the satanic archetype, if you like, evil, all right? That came into the world at the fall, all right? Hopefully we'll have time to touch on that today. The original principle is white, blue, and red, which is spirit, mind, and body, concept, plan, and action, okay? Deity, feminine, masculine, in that order, all right? But when you remove the deity and replace it with the satanic archetype or something that is evil, okay, naturally the outcome is not going to be good anymore, okay? So symbolism equates to the concept. The architecture then of whatever you're going to do, I have to use single words, guys, because I'm limited here, you know. How do you make manifest a reality? Well, you have to do it through an architecture. It could be bureaucrats and administrators. It could be a plan, drawn out plan or anything, or a written document, but it always precedes the ultimate action, all right? Unless, of course, you're either drunk or in a rage, when you might do something spontaneously, and usually that doesn't work out good, okay? But every conscious act any human being does, it's concept, plan, and action. It follows that model, okay? So the symbolism is up there with the concept. We have to be able to understand what's the symbolism telling us. Are we supposed to comply with this? Are we supposed to resist it? Do I want to align with the original principle, or am I more worried about my pay packet or my promotion, if you know what I mean? Okay, now, so we're back to Eden. Excuse me. So what existed in Eden? Maybe I need to pull this up a little bit. So what existed in Eden? Here are some of these triads that all align with the original principle. God, Eve, and Adam. Deity, woman, and man. Spirit, mind, and body. Concept, plan, and action. The Garden of Eden. Tree of knowledge. The tree of life. Origin, feminine and masculine. Truth, wisdom, and activity. And interesting, guys, I'll just throw in a little side issue for the theologians out there, all right? That would correspond to theos, which equates to God, sophos, which equates to wisdom, and logos, which equates to the word in action, all right? So there's another one, all right? Eternal, internal, and external. Source, alignment, and connection. Love, beauty, and creativity. Electrons, neutrons, and protons, and I hear you sort of going, hold on a minute, you know, equals the original principle. Now, I haven't put them all there, of course, and you say, oh, what's this protons, neutrons, electrons bit? What's going on about there? Well, just to hammer home a point, my friends, this is this diagram top right there, the box, the oblong box, that comes out of the book I showed you at the beginning. And that was me drawing after studying quantum physics just to a basic level to try and understand where this original triadic archetype fitted in and all that, all right? So, but these other drawings, as you can see, are taken from a science page on the internet. And as you can see, they are identical, except for my drawings are a little more basic, okay? So very simply, you've got the proton and the neutron surrounded by an electron. That's what makes an atom, okay? And the proton has 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, and the neutron has 2 down quarks and 1 up quark. That's how I give them feminine and masculine properties. But they equate to a family, you know, a traditional family, call it the atomic family, of course, where you have a man and a woman surrounded by love. There you have it again, spirit, mind, and body, concept, plan, and action. The chakras align with these as well, the crown chakra, communication chakra, and the chakra in the energy point in the groin. Okay? I hope you're all with me here on this, guys. It's all starting to, like I said, the more coincidences there are, the less likely they are coincidences. So we're back here to the Garden of Eden. And again, if you remember from last week, I know it's a mythological story, and I'm not, you know, some people say, oh, the Bible's a load of nonsense and everything. I believed that at one time. Interestingly, it was the discovery of these symbolic patterns in it that made me realize, well, whatever it is, there's something going on subliminal here. Beneath the author's knowledge. None of the authors of the Bible knew that they were doing this at the time. They certainly never documented the fact that they were aware of the properties of light and all this sort of stuff when they were documenting many of the stories in the Bible, which we won't have time to look at today, but some of them are really worth a second look. So we did discuss last week briefly the fruit. And we do know, so there's the Garden of Eden in the middle. That's origin, Eve and Adam, yeah, or God, Eve and Adam, whichever way you'd like to look at. The tree of knowledge, which I put in blue just for symbolic properties there on the left, and the tree of life, they were the 2 trees that are mentioned in the book of Genesis. And they are instructed, if you remember, they're instructed, you can do anything you like, but don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, all right? Now, many people talk about the apple. There's no mention of an apple in Scripture, guys, in the Garden of Eden. Not at all. It talks about the fruit. So the fruit is the produce. And again, if you remember last week, we mentioned this again. So if we say, right, the tree of life represents Adam, because our lineages all trace through our fathers, don't they? Right? The tree, your own family tree, right? All symbolism and words and metaphors and everything. Okay. So the tree of life corresponds to Adam, not just because I say so, but because in many ancient mythological stories, Native American Indians, for example, they have, instead of a tree of life, they've got an original totem pole, all right? But it's red, okay? All right? And the word Adam in Hebrew means red, Adam, I think it is, yeah? So there's a lot more going on than we're fully aware of, you know? And then, so we said, so the fruit, if Eve is being represented by the tree of knowledge, if that's the feminine aspect, what fruit can we assign to a woman? And the answer is in your Hail Mary, guys. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. So the fruit of the womb would be a child, and children generally don't just get magicked, do they? So they were being told, basically, guys, don't have sex yet. And the satanic figure comes along and whispers in Eve's ear, and he says, don't you listen to God, he's lying to you. You know, and she goes and tempts Adam, you know. So this proverbial fruit they're talking about is she gets the idea in her head. Why? Because she's closest to the spirit. Do you remember? Spirit, mind, and body. Arguably, it would have been a lot harder for Satan, if you like, as a spirit, to have dealt with Adam because he's one step further away. And this will make sense in a moment when we talk about the Cain and Abel story. So if you think about it logically, guys, apart from the act of disobedience, what they did was they chose to disassociate, to disconnect from God, from the source. That's why beforehand, everything hunky-dory. And what does Scripture say? They were walking and talking naked and unashamed with God in the garden. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because after they partake of the fruit, they don't do that, guys. They cover their loins. And now they're ashamed because they're naked, because that's where the problem happened. It's really quite intriguing, guys, and it makes such a lot of sense, because if then, and without talking now about anything else other than saying, right, imagine a scenario where they hadn't disobeyed and had continued to follow the directions from the Spirit through their mind to their bodies, then arguably the human race, we would have been glorious, magnificent beings. There'd have been no real place for evil in a world like that. Who knows what we'd be doing now, conquering other universes or what? I've no idea. But certainly those of us alive today, even the very best of us, I mean, the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the wisest, the most spiritually connected to God, none of them, we all pale in comparison to the original potential for Adam and Eve, if you know what I mean. And here's where it makes a lot of sense, guys, because then if you say to yourself, yeah, I'm sorry, guys, I'm not paying much attention to the comments today. Someone says, Joe says, say hi to Danny. Great. Thank you, guys. And I'll look at the question in a moment. So it makes sense, because if you then say to yourself, okay, so what they did, what was wrong with what they did? Well, by engaging in intercourse, by having sex before they were ready, in other words, before they were mature enough, they were physically mature enough, clearly, but they weren't emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually mature enough, right? And we all know this story. You go down to the disco. You're not praying God saying, please find me a wholesome woman who's, going to be a great mother and is kind and honest and decent. You're looking at the shape and whatever it might be that might thrill you on the spot, and the pursuit is on. Spirituality, well, what's that got to do with it? Planning, well, what's that got to do with it? Let's just get to the action, right? Now, there's an argument here that what happened then was Adam and Eve were now parents, and they're now separated from the deity. They're sort of imperfect, which is where this number 6 comes from, right? The imperfection. They didn't reach the seventh day of completion and all the rest of it before they disobeyed their instructions. But now they have children, and they never fulfilled the course themselves. They didn't go all the way through maturity to adulthood and it being in the right place and time to then have their own children, because then they could have imparted God's wisdom, would come through them to their children, but they were cut off from that now. So now they've got children, and again, I know there's different stories going on about that, but at least Scripture focuses in on Cain and Abel. There's a reason for that. Arguably, there's other books, like the Book of Jubilees, for example, that talks about their daughters that ended up marrying, of course, the brothers and all the rest of it. It's all very interesting, but it gets a bit too complicated to discuss in a short presentation like this today. But the point was that they now have offspring, and they don't really know how to educate them properly. And if you are disconnected from the source, the obvious consequence, as I keep showing in the different slides I show, is that you've got the wrong concept, okay? And when you have the wrong concept, or an imperfect concept, you're going to have imperfect plans and imperfect actions at best. If you have an evil concept, it leads to evil plans and evil actions, which is largely what we see going on in the world today, guys, I'm afraid to say, okay? So that's why, and this is, I'm going to jump a little bit. We can come back to this another day, but this is why, and I'm going to give you a novel explanation, those of you that might be new here today, a novel explanation for the Cain and Abel story, very simply, right? If you think about it, remember, concept, plan, and action, spirit, mind, and body, deity, feminine, masculine. Do you remember the chakras? Okay. So looking at Cain and Abel, Cain was the larger, older, stronger brother. That puts him in the masculine position. Abel was a shepherd looking after the sheep. right? You can argue it's a bit of a girly job even, you know what I mean, right? But that definitely puts him in the feminine position. And that's why when they then instigate the very first religious act talked about in the Bible, the very first religious act, they try to make offerings. Why are they doing that? Because they can't talk directly to God. So they make symbolic offerings. Do you understand the concept, the symbol, right? So they make the symbolic offerings, and God does a strange thing and says, thank you, lads, for your offerings. Abel, I can accept yours. Cain, I'm sorry, son, I can't accept yours, but do the right thing. Why is your countenance fallen? Surely if you do the right thing, all will be well. But watch out, because sin is crouching at your door. Now, all of this makes so much sense to me in line with this original principle, because had Cain simply given his offering to Abel, right? Because the big alpha male muscle men, we're supposed to be in service to our feminine elements of compassion, maternal wisdom, and all that sort of stuff that we do carry, even in our own personas. But, you know, we're supposed to be in service to the feminine ethos, which in turn is closer to the divine. All right? That's the way this works. So had Cain given his offering to Abel, who knows what might have happened? God might have been able to say, bingo, lads, you've got it. Okay, now we can start to undo the problem that your parents caused. We've realigned the sequence back in the right order, but unfortunately, that's not what happened. Instead, Cain violates the original principle once again and murders his brother. And that's been the story of humanity. In fact, it was Cain, inspired by Satan, of course, who then goes off and sets up what we're told is the first human city with taxation systems and laws and all that sort of stuff, which is the same as we have today all over the world. It's very interesting, isn't it? And the colors and everything align, and even the flags of the world and everything come into play with all this, guys, which we'll get to in future talks. So where are we now? So just to rub it in a little bit, guys, I just want to point this out. First of all, later on in history, symbolic elements of the Greek soul and biblical symbolism. Now, the Greeks had a concept, Aristotle perhaps, I'm not quite sure, but they had a concept of soul. They'd come up with this notion that we weren't just a mind and a body, but there was a spirit there somewhere as well, a soul, right? And in their ideology, the soul was made half of fire and half of water. So there's your red and your blue again, all right? Okay, your liquid and your fire. They're opposite ends in the yin-yang, you know, fire and water and all that sort of stuff, right? But that's what they thought, right? And it was just an idea. They were trying to give it form in their minds. Oh, yeah, there's a little bit of us, and it's a little bit of fire and a little bit of water mixed together, and that's what's holding everything together in the human psyche, if you like. And what do you think they called it? They called it atom. Now, isn't that interesting after what I've just shown you, right? And now here's this other quote here below is from Exodus 26:1. I'm just making a point here, guys. This is a longer discussion for another day. I want you to be asking yourself a question as I read this, you know. You are to construct the tabernacle itself with 10 curtains of finely spun linen. What color is linen? White. 10 curtains of finely twisted linen, white, and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. Scarlet is red. Blah, 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 blah. All right. The point I'm making is, why did they have to choose those colors? Purple is different because it's not actually a color of the spectrum. It's symbolic of royalty because it's made from very rare flowers, or someone said the other day, very precious snails, I think, or rare snails that give out this dye, this purple dye. But it was only rich people could afford to buy or to dye their garments purple back in the day. So it became a symbol of royalty. No doubt some royals banned everybody else from using it. And they mock Christ in some versions of the Bible by putting a purple robe on him, you know, as crucifixion. Some say scarlet, some say purple. But isn't it interesting? You've got the white, the blue, and the red here, back in ancient scripture. And there's more examples of this, many, many more examples that we'll cover in due course, to show that if coincidences keep happening, they are not coincidences. This is one of the previous slides I showed you guys, the 3 diabolical Ds. So how do you know when an organization, an institution, or an individual is not in alignment with this original principle, well, they will try to dominate you rather than elevate you. They will be devious rather than truthful. And they will be destructive rather than empowering. All right. Again, there's all of these. It's a bit of fun actually matching up all of these triads that you can contrast with each other. Okay. But that is the diabolical sort of observation. Okay. How are we doing for time? I'll see if I can get to a couple of the comments here. So there we are, in contrast to what I just showed you: domination, deviousness, and destruction, which is the diabolical model. You have spirituality, or freedom, if you like. You could call it even freedom, spiritual freedom. Sovereignty, if I think something is right, then I should do it. Now, again, it's sovereignty based on this original principle, though. It's not anarchy, sovereignty, so to speak, not pure anarchy. In other words, free for all. Anybody can do anything they want. You can kill anyone you want. You can do it. No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's sovereignty in alignment with the original principle. And finally, healthy sexuality. All right. And there you have at the bottom, true sovereign people forming collaborative communities based upon the traditional family unit. That's where we're heading with this, as opposed to much that is being pushed on us at the moment. And almost, we're doing all right today, guys. I'll just very quickly. So this is a summary slide, just to summarize really what we've gone through so far. All right. First of all, the light spectrum, we're all made of light, and the nanometers, the 700 at one end, 400 at the other, correspond to red and blue respectively. White is universal light, okay, corresponds to spirit, mind, and body, which equals a true human or a child of God. All right. Concept, plan, or action over there on the right. Yeah. Down at the bottom there, we've got at the bottom genetics and physiology, the action, the body, the learning and the environment. This is our life, how we start off as babies, look like our parents, our genetics and physiology. Then we go through an environment where we learn things and we're educated, hopefully, as opposed to being indoctrinated. And then finally, at the top, we have a personal choice, and that's where the soul or the conscience comes in. The middle line there, there's the fire and the water, the Greek soul, which is atom. Yeah, there you have my diagrams of the two atoms with the quarks forming a united atom there. Yeah. Also DNA, well, that's, believe it or not, that's called mitochondrial Eve, the DNA, believe it or not, but not today, guys. I'm watching the clock. And the protons and neutrons and all the rest of it down the bottom, the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, the Garden of Eden, Adam, Eve, fire and water, deity, source, masculine and feminine, true love of God equals the atomic family. Now, I hope that hasn't gone over too many people's heads. It's only the beginning, guys. Trust me. I'm going to show you things that if you haven't seen them before, and there's only a few people that have seen them before, you will be staring at the screen in disbelief and just be saying, because ultimately it comes down to say, well, what is this original principle thing? If it's binding all these things together, if it's in our myths and our folklore, and it's in our scriptures, if it's in science, if it's in the structure of atoms and light, and then, as I will show you soon, it represents the flags of the world. They're all following patterns, either in alignment or in opposition to these principles at important times in history, and nobody knew that they were doing it. What is going on? Is there such a thing as an overarching source, a deity, who is keeping tabs on us all, And of course, I've just about run out of time, so I'm going to pop through very quickly. I'll just take you straight through to the last slide, guys, there. If you're looking for other places to find us, I'll do my best to answer all the questions, guys. I'm going to cut the slides down definitely next week, guys. All right, so we have a bit more time to look at the comments and the questions, and what's the word? Not expose. What is it? Highlight some of them for next week. I've only got 30 seconds, guys. Thank you, Maureen, again, Josie, Joe, Mary, and of course, I won't be able to get to everyone. Sean, the funny man, etc., etc. Thank you, guys. Please spread this, and I will hopefully talk to you again next week. I'll do my very best to try and hit the 7 o'clock deadline. Must go, guys. Love and God bless, and peace to all men and women, of course.